Bartholomew Town.
Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible, asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental science, and more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Are you ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. All right, so we talked about the pop-up unhoused shelter at Providence City Hall a lot over the last couple of weeks, certainly on the podcast here in a number of contexts. One, I just gave my thoughts on it in general. And then number two, sort of in context of reaction to the state of the state that took place. My time frame is a little bit off here, but it's within the last couple of weeks, we've had this all as a centerpiece of discussion. Also on the radio side, it's something that we've been talking about that I've been celebrating in a lot of different ways. The Nation wrote a really great piece on this, and the two councilors behind the pop-up shelter for the unhoused at Providence City Hall join us. And I guess the right thing to do is just to make sure we associate the voice with the human. If you each want to introduce yourselves, starting with Miguel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. My name is Miguel Sanchez. I'm a Providence City Councilor, Ward 6, represent Mount Pleasant, and a little bit of Oneyville Valley neighborhoods. And then for my day job, which is very important for this conversation, I work as a street outreach worker for a local nonprofit here in Providence called Better Lives, Rhode Island.
And Justin?
Yeah, thanks, Bill, for inviting us. My name is Justin Roias. I'm the Providence City Councilor of the 4th Ward, also known as the North End. And I represent the neighborhoods, Charles neighborhood and the Wanskup neighborhood. And, beyond my role as a city councilor, I'm a licensed therapist and a full-time school social worker.
All right. Well, thanks again, both of you, for being here. So, look, we've got a major crisis of the unhoused here in Rhode Island. It's something that is still shocking. It seems like there's a lot of different lanes that people try to traverse when describing how we got here. I mean, you can just look at the overall bleak economic realities of where we are as a society. That's one factor, of course, the housing crisis itself. But then also from a managerial standpoint, there seems to be this massive disconnect between some of the administration in terms of the governor's office, some of the providers in terms of the Coalition to End Homelessness, and there just seems to be wires crossed, and at the end of the day, just simply not enough places for people to go that are in need of either warming or full-on shelter. So with that as sort of the obvious background, where did the idea to do a pop-up shelter at City Hall first come from your standpoints?
Councilor Sanchez, you want me to take a crack at this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bill, we didn't think about this until the 11th hour. I think the local media, in my view, has sort of glossed over the fact that at that time we had exhausted all of our options. We had been very, I think, clear publicly is that we had reached out to the mayor's administration at first. It was, I believe, actually, Councilor Sanchez had sent out an email to the administration on Monday morning, I believe. Councilor, you could correct me on that. But it was Monday morning, the first day of the polar vortex. And we had asked them to find a city-owned building that could operate as an emergency shelter. And they ultimately said that they were supporting efforts at the warming center and at the warming centers they identified, which I think at the time was just 2. We had said that was inadequate because, again, I've been pretty vocal that warming centers, these folks cannot rest their heads, they cannot lay down, and so they have to sit in a chair from night to morning. And if the polar vortex was going on for about a week, and to do that every night is just simply inhumane. We had then asked them, well, if you can't get us a rec center, I was, I had said, can we try the Da Vinci Center, which is a community center in my neighborhood? I have a really great relationship with the executive director. And prior to asking the administration for the green light to secure the Da Vinci Center, uh, we had already had a conference call with the executive director who approved it. We just needed the city to do so as well. They ultimately declined it, said we would need a special use permit to secure the facility as an emergency shelter for folks to stay overnight. And so we then continued to search, for other buildings, and we were we were not lucky to find one. And so, Councilor Sanchez and I just ultimately agreed that we have no options. The only space we have control over is our city council chambers. And if that means being very creative and going the unconventional route to save lives, we're going to do it. And so I kind of want to dispel this notion that this was some type of stunt that we had planned. This was this took us 10 less than 10 hours to pull off, to get all trained volunteers together. It took a Herculean effort, and at times it was messy to organize, but we made it happen. And when I say we, not just us, this couldn't have happened without the trained volunteers that already had a rapport with our unhoused neighbors. As much as we're getting credit for doing something that I view to not be courageous, all the credit goes to the volunteers who were so generous with their time and capacity. And so I just want to continue to give them credit on whatever public platform I'm on, Bill.
I completely agree that there was a very holistic approach there, but no doubt you both deserve credit because you've identified something that the system simply is not resolving, and you took action. Miguel, your take on how this came to be and the reaction also.
Absolutely. Thank you. Just Councilor Roias described it pretty well. The only two things that I would like to add is we obviously didn't get here out of nowhere. We all, like you mentioned, have understood, especially us that work in this field, of how dire the crisis is. So the need, I think, was the most clear thing at the beginning of all this is that folks, have been calling, even before we started this for a couple of weeks now. We knew it was going to get freezing. Activists and advocates and people in this work have been calling on the governor to declare a public health emergency for this exact reason, knowing we don't have the current infrastructure in place to handle such freezing temperatures, to get people off the streets just on a nightly basis, to be able to rest, to literally not freeze to death. So that's why, how I speak about my day job and how important this is, that I have, so many personal relationships with a lot of members of our unhoused community. And, we try with them. We call places. We're on the CES line for a couple hours at a time. Sometimes, unfortunately, we try to get certain vouchers, other programs up and running. And the demand is just too high right now, Bill. And that's why I want to always be honest with folks that, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, because we're simply not acting fast enough. Decision makers, state leaders, people in the development world, we really got to use this not as an example, but as hopefully as a learning opportunity for folks. I think we shed a lot of light on some of the barriers that some warming centers have. I think the Providence Journal had a great piece about how a neighbor just couldn't go into a specific warming center because of the gear he had on him. It was either abandon all the gear or him resting, and eventually he chose to stay with his gear because he didn't know if that warming center would be an option the next night. So those were a couple pieces that I would like to add, that we didn't get here randomly. This has been built up. Like Councilor Roias mentioned, we did exhaust other options, and then also definitely highlight the amount of folks that were involved especially a big shout out to my colleagues at Better Lives who really stepped up the first couple nights and volunteered their own time. My executive director was very helpful as well those first couple days and throughout the whole 2 weeks. Because, we're still, in middle of winter and we're kind of still working. Big shout out to the folks in the mayor's administration, Dennis Gonzalez, tremendous help, housing resource coordinator. And then, the hundreds of volunteers and so many people donated supplies. That first night at City Hall, we realized, I think around like 8:30, 9 o'clock, that our food was running low. So I put a message out on my Instagram, and literally 50 pizzas got delivered within an hour. It was a lot of mixed emotions, obviously that even having to do this in the first place, but just seeing how much our community stepped up, really, helped throughout the process, I would say, and gave us a little bit more of hope in our community to keep fighting that motivation.
So beautiful. And Bill, if I could just add, part of what we did for that one night where we opened up the council chambers served as leverage to actually secure the Da Vinci Center much later. So again, our goal wasn't, to use the chambers as a pop-up emergency shelter for the remaining of the week, although we were prepared to do so. But the next day, I don't think, again, I made this known on X, that the mayor's administration didn't want another night in the chambers, and honestly, nor did we. It's inadequate. It's not designed to be a shelter. But look what happened the next day. They gave us the green light to move operations to the Da Vinci Center. In my view, we created that leverage. And again, I give credit where it's due. The mayor's administration has now come to the table, and we are working out a plan to provide emergency shelter at the Da Vinci Center on the coldest nights. Now, yes, winter is cold every day, but it's a start, and hopefully we have created some waves here that can ultimately improve this, so we're not chasing kind of emergency shelter infrastructure every winter. So I hope that we're making some progress here, but I just want to give also credit to members of the mayor's administration for coming to the table. I think it's really important. And they're here, and we're very happy about that.
And that's the thing. That's really, when you look at this story from a macro standpoint, and you say, what is this really about? Obviously, it's about community. Obviously, it's about saving lives, at least potentially, if not putting people in a much healthier situation. But more than anything, to me, the big takeaway is a theme that we've seen throughout the course of history. We've seen it throughout the course of world history, United States history, Rhode Island history, and that is when people from, you want to call it an underground level, you want to call it a community organizing level, you want to call it the punk rock level of political pressure, whatever it is, when people take action into their own hands, it oftentimes fuels the decision-making of officialdom. And so while there may be people that scoff at the notion at the beginning, eventually they realize, hey, we've got to come to the table, not only for political reasons, but just for the fact that now we've been informed about what's possible and what's necessary. You were able to do that. That's the big victory here, is that you move the needle in the right direction by taking this action. And no, it was not a purely political stunt. Detractors have tried to paint you as antagonizers, when in fact, the type of antagonism that you brought with this is the type of antagonism that has moved human progress forward.
And that's the important part, Bill, to acknowledge here. Councilor Roias and I, we definitely come. You could say from the activist world, we were always involved in direct actions. Even right now, what we're seeing with immigration stuff. My first action at 10 years old was a massive protest regarding an ICE raid. So this is stuff that is in my blood. And as we navigate the the political world now as legislators and decision makers. You always get told like, oh, you're not an activist anymore, you're a decision maker, and I think that's the mindset that is very dangerous. I think growing up and being deeply involved in the BLM protest, in the Palestinian liberation movement, right now that we're still fighting, and you use this experience of being out in the streets with the masses of the people and bring them to the table, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. I work with our unhoused neighbors during the day, our most some of our most vulnerable community members, and try to bring their voices to the table at City Hall. I think it's a very impactful experience, and something that we have to do right now, in the terms of the constraints that we have at the local government. We really need to be creative in every aspect possible, and I think that's something that we got to stay committed to throughout our political terms.
Yeah, and Bill, if you don't mind, I think I want to share something that I don't think has been highlighted enough about sort of the action uh, in the city council chambers that night. One of the things that I take away, besides keeping people warm and safe, when we opened up those chambers, I had recalled seeing a few of our unhoused neighbors just kind of walking the halls of City Hall, being in awe of the portraits, of the history that was displayed on the walls in the hallway. And for many of them, it was their first time at City Hall. It was their first time, most likely in a government building, walking, to not sound cliche, the hallways of power, and I think that night, beyond just saving lives, is we challenged the traditional notion of who belongs in these spaces, and to me that was so powerful. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. And it's something. It's one of the reasons why I ran for office to begin with, because that's the demographic I truly care about. The average person, the folks who are living on the margins, that's who we need to take care of in our city. And I think often they're not the priority.
I could not agree more. And I think what is starting to happen here in this moment with Trump 2.0, and it's bigger than Trump. I mean, let's not just pretend that it's only Trump that has made people realize that the system is against them. But more and more people are starting to realize, hey, if we're going to take action, it's going to be at the community level. I mean, there's very little that any of us are going to do to disrupt, international trade policy or any sort of major global picture of oligarchy from our position in Providence. It wouldn't matter if we were in Washington. It wouldn't matter anything. Not yet, not in the micro format that we've done, but you can make a huge impact on your own community, on your own city, on your own state, in our case, and even region, with this type of action. And it changes politics in a way that it makes politics seem more accessible to people, but more than anything, it seems more like there's a point to it. And with this pop-up shelter, what's been fascinating is some of the people who have been the most resistant to it, or were the most resistant to it, or made fun of you guys, or made fun of me for talking about it on the radio or the podcast, or said, that I was an idiot, or whatever it is, that I'm naive. We've been in these spaces. I've been in spaces like this where organizing and community action leads to moving officialdom in a better direction than they were trending. It is possible. It's really an example for how leaders ought to be thinking now, creatively, and not necessarily about their own career advancement, but about the advancement of and survival of the species. And it takes a lot of courage to do what you did. Ultimately, I think, like you said, the mayor's office came to the table. I think by and large, a lot of councilors support fellow councilors support what you do. Certain state reps and senators do, but there's still going to be a gap where there's people who, they fancy themselves important, and they look at you and say, it's just a bunch of kids, doing a bunch of nonsense. They can't get it through their heads that this is where we're going and no one's going to stop us.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. I think it's important to you, like I mentioned. I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts that like Councilor Roy says that this absolutely wasn't an intentional PR or stunt, but we're going to use the attention to relay our message, to keep hammering how dire the crisis is. If we can elevate more personal stories from folks that are doing this work to get people at the right table, so the right folks can hear directly what's going on, then absolutely we're going to use the opportunity as much as possible. Because like I said, this crisis isn't going anywhere. Our leaders here in the city, at the state level, on the regional level, are not acting fast enough when it comes to developing more low income public housing. So yeah, we're definitely going to use the moment. And you highlighted our city council colleagues. I think that's someone we haven't mentioned up to this point. And huge shout out to the council president, majority leader. They stayed the whole night there at the chambers with us. A few other councilors stopped throughout the night. Without them, council staff was there helping coordinate volunteers for a couple hours at least that first night. So definitely a huge shout out to them, because it really is a whole holistic community effort that we definitely want to highlight as much as possible.
Justin, last word from you.
Yeah, I think beyond that, I still want to use this platform, Bill, to just simply ask our state leaders, our governor, to declare a public health emergency. It's still winter, and I was reading an article, Bill, that a pastor from Ohio was charged with violating fire codes for letting unhoused people sleep in his church. The clearest thing a public health emergency can do for us right now is to waive those fire codes, to allow people to sleep in churches. And right now we have a lot of faith-based groups that want to open up their doors, but they fear sort of these similar heavy-handed consequences if they're breaking fire codes. So I wanted to be clear about that. I know the governor has disputed that a public health emergency won't unlock funding, but separate from that, what it can do is allow churches to be given to be empowered to open up their doors to save lives. And I can't understand why it's such a difficult thing to just simply do that, separate from the funding issue. This is so clear to in my mind. So I encourage the governor to just sign the order to make this happen. And so I just wanted to also continue to kind of raise that as well, Bill.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason one of the reasons that he says he won't do that, maybe now with political pressure from his two seeming opponents in 2026, if nothing else, both Shekarchi and, likely opponent Shekarchi and folks calling on or finding ways to try to make this workaround happen, whether through public health emergency or legislation. Maybe that'll move the governor. Maybe he's had a change of heart. I guess we'll find out this week how it plays out. Councilors, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for the work that you're doing on the ground and in the chambers.
Thank you, Bill. Take care.
Thank you, Bill.
As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org.